Welcome to our exploration of Paul's teachings in 1 Corinthians chapter 9. Before we delve into the specifics, let's understand the context of Paul's words. In this chapter, Paul is addressing questions about his apostleship and defending his ministry approach. Some in Corinth were questioning his authority and methods, particularly his decision not to accept financial support from the Corinthian church. Paul uses this opportunity to explain his rights as an apostle, why he chooses not to exercise some of these rights, and how this relates to his overall mission of spreading the gospel. Now let's uncover the deep roots of Paul's instructions in the Torah and the prophets, demonstrating how his guidance to the early church was grounded in the timeless wisdom of Scripture. Paul begins by asserting his rights as an apostle, but does so to make a larger point. He asks in verses 4 to 6, "Don't we have the right to food and drink? Don't we have the right to take a believing wife along with us, as do the other apostles and the Lord's brothers and Cephas? Or is it only I and Barnabas who lack the right to not work for a living?" Paul then provides scriptural support for these rights. He quotes Deuteronomy 25:4, "Do not muzzle an ox while it is treading out the grain," applying this principle of fair compensation to those who labor in ministry. This principle of supporting those who minister is deeply rooted in Torah. In Deuteronomy 18 verse 1 to 5 we read, "The Levitical priests, indeed the whole tribe of Levi, are to have no allotment or inheritance with Israel. They shall live on the food offerings presented to Yahuwah, for that is their inheritance. They shall have no inheritance among their fellow Israelites. Yahuwah is their inheritance, as he promised them. This is the share due the priests from the people who sacrifice a bull or a sheep, the shoulder, the internal organs, and the meat from the head. You are to give them the first fruits of your grain, new wine and olive oil, and the first wool from the shearing of your sheep. For Yahuwah your Elohim has chosen them and their descendants out of all your tribes to stand and minister in Yahuwah's name always." Similarly, in Numbers 18:21, Yahuwah declares, "I give to the Levites all the tithes in Israel as their inheritance in return for the work they do while serving at the tent of meeting." This principle is further reinforced in Malachi 3:10. "Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says Yahuwah Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it." Paul applies this principle to those who preach the gospel, showing continuity between the Levitical priesthood and the New Covenant ministry. However, after establishing these rights, Paul takes an unexpected turn. In verse 15, he declares, "But I have not used any of these rights, and I am not writing this in the hope that you will do such things for me, for I would rather die than allow anyone to deprive me of this boast." Paul chooses to forgo his right to support for a specific purpose, which he explains in verses 12 and 23. "On the contrary, we put up with anything rather than hinder the gospel of Christ. I do all this for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings." This self-denial for a greater purpose reflects the actions of Moses, who, according to Hebrews 11:24-26, by faith Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt, because he was looking ahead to his reward. We see similar examples of self-denial in the Tanakh. In 1 Samuel 17:17-18 we read about David. "Now Jesse said to his son David, 'Take this ephah of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers and hurry to their camp. Take along these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. See how your brothers are and bring back some assurance from them.'" Here, David leaves his flock to serve his brothers in the army, prioritizing their needs over his own. In Jeremiah 35:5-6, we see the Rechabites abstaining from wine. "Then I set bowls full of wine and some cups before the Rechabites and said to them, 'Drink some wine.' But they replied, 'We do not drink wine, because our forefather Jehonadab son of Rechab gave us this command, neither you nor your descendants must ever drink wine.'" By presenting his rights and then choosing not to use them, Paul demonstrates both the validity of supporting ministers and the power of sacrificial service. He upholds the principles of the Torah while also showing how one might go beyond the letter of the law for the sake of the gospel. In verses 19 to 23, Paul describes his approach to ministry. Though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone, to win as many as possible. I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. This adaptability for the sake of others reflects the wisdom of Proverbs 11:30. The fruit of the righteous is a tree of life, and the one who is wise saves lives. Paul's approach also mirrors the prophet Daniel's ability to serve God faithfully while adapting to life in Babylon. We see this principle of adaptability in action with Joseph in Egypt. Genesis 41, verse 41 to 43 tells us, "So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command, and people shouted before him, "Make way!" Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Similarly, with Esther, who navigated Persian court life to save her people. In Esther 4:15-16 we read, "Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai, Go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish." Paul concludes the chapter with an analogy of an athlete in training in verses 24 to 27. "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever." This concept of disciplined pursuit of a goal is found in Proverbs 4:13. "Hold on to instruction. Do not let it go. Guard it well, for it is your life." The idea of an eternal reward is echoed in Daniel 12:3. "Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness, like the stars forever and ever." We find similar exhortations to discipline and perseverance in Isaiah 40:31. "But those who hope in Yahuwah will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." Psalm 109:2 also encourages this pursuit. "I run in the path of your commands, for you have broadened my understanding." In conclusion, Paul's teachings in 1 Corinthians 9 demonstrate a deep understanding and application of Torah principles. From the support of spiritual leaders to self-discipline for a greater purpose, Paul shows how the timeless wisdom of Scripture can be applied to new contexts. His instructions to the Corinthian church are not novel inventions, but thoughtful applications of Elohim's eternal truths to the challenges faced by early believers. As we reflect on these teachings, may we gain a deeper appreciation for the continuity of Elohim's wisdom throughout Scripture and be inspired to apply these principles in our own lives and communities. Until next time, Shalom.